What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of the Big Five Pod. Hope we have reached the three-quarters of a century mark here. Episode number 75 of the Big Five Pod. How about it? I'm, of course, your co-host, Kyle Morello, and next to me, in a different little setup today, laptops in the shop. So we're still making it work, though, Cope. We're dedicated. We got Jake Copestick here. Cope, how we doing?
We're doing well. We're doing well. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Laptop's a little old. Might be some viruses on there. So that guy's in the shop. I have quite this setup going on here. You got it. You got a fancy little backdrop in your room. You have a nice microphone. I have my phone because I don't have my laptop with me. I have my phone in my car cup holder on my desk. That's how the show's going on today.
Listen,
In my neck of the woods.
we appreciate the dedication because
Look, we're figuring it out. We're making it work. We're making it work. This late in the season, Kyle. I even said to you last week, I was like, I might have to take 2 days off. It's almost March. Can't take a day off. What is this?
no,
Can't be doing that. So yeah,
no days off.
I have a really odd setup here. But we're making it work. We're making it work. I had to switch up my backdrop. So me and Kyle were at Tom Goal Arena on Saturday. So I have that backdrop from that game. I think they said it was the highest attended game since 2018 there at Tom Goal. So good for them. Really good game. Last Big Five game in the original in the Tom Goal Arena as we know it before it undergoes the renovation next year to become Glazer Arena. So yeah, we're figuring it out, Kyle. We're figuring it out. A lot of it. Look, we're dealing with the adversity as it comes. We're dealing with it. But we couldn't take off with March coming up.
Cannot take off. And listen, that's what great teams got to do in March. They got to deal with adversity. They got to overcome. I did not pronounce that word right. Adversary. We're gonna move on. We're gonna move
Jesus,
on. We're gonna move on. I got defeated by the English language again. It's fine.
this
Anyway,
happens like once an episode,
you know what? English is a hard language,
and we
especially
start
when
out, and you're like, oh, English.
especially when it's your first
It
language. It's
happens
hard.
every time.
Adversity is the word I was thinking of.
There
It's
you go.
fine. Listen, on this pod, we gotta overcome adversity, and we gotta get there. So, all right, listen, why don't we get right into it then? We're gonna move on. We're gonna start with the inner Big Five matchup this weekend between St. Joe's and LaSalle, as you mentioned at Tom Goal Arena. First of all, my first time there. It was cool. It was very confusing to get into, to get to where we needed to go for the media section. But that's besides the point, because there was a very, very good game that was played on the court, which saw St. Joe's winning 88 to 82. Listen, Cope, this was a tale of two halves, really a tale of one quarter of the game. You saw LaSalle come out and they played really, really well. They got up to a 64 to 52 lead with about 10 minutes left to play, and then it all kind of came crashing down. St. Joe's called a timeout. Obviously, Billy Lang said, "Listen, we're gonna press here," and they did just that. Um, LaSalle could not find anything on offense. St. Joe's could. They came all the way back. They won this game 88 to 82. Some top performers of this one for the Hawks, Eric Reynolds II, of course. We say his name every time. 21 points, 7 of 13 from the field, 5 of 8 from three. I mean, he was phenomenal. Lynn Greer as well, 16 points, 10 boards. Rasheer Fleming at 17 and 9 in this one. They really got contributions from a lot of people. Even Kreese, 16 and 9 as well. And then for the Explorers, the high scorer of the game was Jameer Brickus, 24 points on 8 of 13, 6 of 8 from three. Also had 8 rebounds and 8 assists, so almost a triple double for him. And Cope, there was also a few other people, by the way, who scored 15 points: Brantley, Rokas, and Marrero for LaSalle. But what I want to talk about first off the bat, LaSalle came out firing in this game from three. I believe they took probably toward a season high. They took 34 threes in this game. They made 14 of them. So it was a decent percentage. They were shooting at a very high clip, volume wise. I don't know if it's something St. Joe's was expecting. And we talk about St. Joe's difficulties defending the 3-point line. Do you think that kind of went into Fran Dunphy's game plan here?
I'm gonna say yes. I just don't believe the St. Joe's defense was nearly as good as it was in the first meeting for it. Like you said, the first 3 quarters of this game. The last time they played, LaSalle put up a bunch of threes. That's what they did. But St. Joe's, what they did was they They limited Jameer Briggs and Khalil Brantley really getting into the paint, getting all the way to the basket. But to do that, they had to help off some shooters, and they had to give up some threes. Now LaSalle wasn't necessarily hitting as many in the first matchup, and they were hitting them here, and they ended up paying the price for that. So the way they counteracted that was speed the game up, press. They forced some turnovers. They got themselves some easy baskets, and then even in the half court as well. That last 10 minutes. They defended the ball very well. They cut off a lot of drives. They forced a lot of tough looks for LaSalle. That's how they ended up winning this game. But to answer your question, that they were just making them. They put up a bunch of threes, over 50% of their attempts in the first matchup, because I asked Billy Lang about that in the press conference after they played on MLK Day, and he said, yeah, like we don't want Brickus and Brantley just to get in the paint, have a field day on us. But by doing that, we help off shooters. We help off Tunde. We help off Morera. Morera had another good game here against St. Joe's, pouring in the amount of points he did off the bench. Just wasn't enough here. Just wasn't enough to overarch about the whole game here. Like, LaSalle played awesome for the first half. They played awesome for about the first 8 to 10 minutes of the second half. I pointed to you. I think there was 10:34 left, I want to say, in the second half.
Yeah.
And I said, LaSalle's got 64 points. They scored 62 all of the last matchup when they played. And from that point on, they went on to score 18 points over the last 10 plus minutes of this one as St. Joe's got back in it. So disappointing for LaSalle, because this is a game that I thought they should have won with the way they played in the first half. I mean, offense was humming in the first half. The ball movement was great. Jameer Brickus was awesome in this game. He was so good. He had a difficult step back three at the end. He had the amount of, I think he had 2 or 3 threes in the first half where he got a swing pass, and as the defender was basically wedged between him and somebody in the corner, like, who do I guard? He just pass faked to the other guy and ended up putting up a three making. And he was awesome in the first half and the entirety of this game. But I think a critical moment was in the second half when Rokas picks up 3 fouls in that first, say, was it 5 minutes? In that first couple minutes in the second half, picks up 3 fouls. Sets an illegal screen. They ding him for his third one in the second half. He's got 4 fouls now. And St. Joe's, like, they easily could have played creased a bunch more in the second half and could have went big. And with a team like LaSalle that really only has Ryan Zan to back up Rokas, they could have went big and tried to use that mismatch that you had in the first matchup. But how about the not necessarily like when I say lack of threes, I don't mean that necessarily a bad way, but they were just pounding the ball at the rim. They were attacking the rim as much as possible. Lynn Greer had a really good second half. Xavier Brown scored all of his points in the second half. He had a couple big buckets for him late. So kind of a different way. You'd figured we'd talk about a 3-point barrage here for the Hawks, but them attacking the basket in the second half, they had a couple and ones, Lynn Greer, Xavier Brown. Like, those were the 2 catalysts here. That, as good as Eric Reynolds was, it was those 2 guys who did all of their point production pretty much. I think Lynn Greer maybe had 2 points in the first half. Xavier Brown scored all of his points in the second half, but pretty much all Lynn Greer's points came in the second half. It was those 2 guys, their ability to get all the way to the rim, and LaSalle's inability to keep those guys from going all the way to the rim really was the difference at the end here. So Hawks needed this one. This is a team that, in terms of offense, in terms of depth, talent, that they're better than. They should have swept LaSalle. It should not have been this close. And St. Joe's can't do this against everybody, just expecting to turn it on in the last 8 to 10 minutes and win, because this is like the complete opposite of almost every game they played. They played well for the first 3 quarters or so, and then it's been closer. They've lost at the end. At least those first 3 losses that they had, but they show just how explosive they are and how good they can be in this first 8 to 10 minutes here. So good win for the Hawks, probably closer than it needed it to be, and disappointing for LaSalle because they really played well enough for a good chunk of this game that I thought they could have won.
Yeah, they did. And, this LaSalle team, we've described them all season. They're scrappy. They will compete. They will be in games. They were very much in this game, and I bet you that side felt that they should have won this game because they were up for a lot of it. But at the end of the day, I do want to go back to your point about them shooting less threes. I think it's a recipe that's been working for them, especially with Kreist being who he is, and when he came back from injury, I feel like there's kind of a little bit of a change in their offensive philosophy. So it's been really good to see. It's good to see them attacking the rim. Obviously, they are a pretty good 3-point shooting team, but they can't rely on that because, as we've seen with them, when the shots aren't falling, everything else gets out of sorts too. So they attack the rim, and then on defense in the second half, or at least late in the second half, they really took it to LaSalle, and they ended up winning this game. And unfortunately for LaSalle, now they dropped to 2-7 in conference play. This win would have been obviously very good for them. But St. Joe's is now in the top five of the A10 where we thought they would be. And while I don't know if they probably won't get a regular season title, this game that we're going to go over in a little bit here later in the episode will definitely help with that. Being the 3 games behind Richmond still, but they can definitely still compete for an A10 championship in the A10 tournament and hopefully get into the tournament. They're that good. They've been playing very well. So yeah, this was definitely a very fun environment though, Tom Gola. I was definitely very happy with the turnout. It did look a little light at first, but students started filling in, some fans started filling in and right at tip off. So yeah, the last game between these two at what we know as Tom Gola Arena. So good for them. All right, Cope, a team that we haven't talked about in a little bit. Unfortunately, there isn't really a ton to talk about still, even after these 2 games they played this weekend, but the Penn Quakers traveled up to the New England area to take on Brown and Yale, the Ivy League doing their doubleheader weekends as they do every so often. It did not go well. It did not go well for the Quakers. They lost at Brown on Friday, 70-61, and at Yale on Saturday, 74-58. They now drop to 1-6 in conference play, 1-5 in conference play, excuse me, 9-12 on the year, and they are tied with Dartmouth for last place in the Ivy League. Listen, I know there's probably not a ton for us to go over per se, because let's face it, they have been outmatched without Clark Slacker. We've mentioned it every episode that they've had a game since he's been injured. And you mentioned it before we started here. When you're without your 2 leading scorers from last year, obviously Dingle being at St. John's now, it's hard to replicate it. And I know they have some talented guys, Tyler Perkins being one of them. Obviously, Nick Spinoso has been there and he's been in tough situations and he's a good player. But this just unfortunately feels like it's not the year for Penn, especially with how good the Ivy League's been top to bottom, or at least at the top between Cornell, Yale, and Princeton. Uh, it's tough. So, Cope, I don't know what you have to say about the Quakers right now. I don't know if there's much you can say, but let me know your thoughts on the Quakers.
Yeah, I mean it's tough right now without Slacker being there, and you look at how young they are with Sam Brown, Polanowski, with Tyler Perkins, with Gerhardt. Like this is unfortunately like results like this are going to happen, especially against Yale. You know how good they are defensively, and how experienced they are, and to be at home like they were against Penn on Saturday. Like there was so many things that were in their favor. Yeah, they're gonna need to win some games that they are gonna be, underdogs in, probably maybe pretty heavily underdogged in. When they still have to play Princeton twice. Yale's got to come there. Like they're gonna have to win. I don't know how they're gonna do it, but they're gonna have to win some games that they shouldn't if they want to get into that top 4. Because right now, like you said, they're tied for last place. But they're young, and they don't have their best player, and they don't have their point guard. And they don't have a vet in Clark Slacker that's been there. So missing a guy like that for a young team to help stabilize them at times and to give them a scoring presence with a team that's this young, it's really, really tough. So the future looks bright with some of the guys they have, but for right now, still kind of figuring this thing out. And the Ivy League, once again, even after losing all the players that they did that transfer elsewhere to use that extra COVID year, it's still a very good league. You're seeing that once again. So, yeah, doesn't look like this is going to be the year that they sneak into that they are in that top 4, and they've been in it pretty much every year that the Ivy League tournament's been a thing. If I believe have they been there every year? I think they might have been maybe the only team that's been there every year. At least like they've been really good under Steve Donahue, and this just kind of a retooling year, if you will, because they have young guys that are contributing to them. But and they'll be better as and they'll be better for this. But for right now, Yeah, they're going up against experienced teams that they just kind of don't have right now. They know that scoring pop that they miss so dearly with Clark Slacker. So um, right now it doesn't look good. Right now it doesn't look good to get into that top four. But for what it's worth, Kyle, it's still time. It's not over. But they're struggling without, like you mentioned, that's like 40 points worth of scoring they lose from last year. Not You can't just pull that out of a hat and have that on court right away. So they're finding that out the hard way, unfortunately, with Slacker being down.
Yeah, it's tough, especially now the losses are accumulating. It's 7 of the last 8. Their only win being over Dartmouth, who's tied with them in last place in the Ivy League. So it's tough. They're going to have to fight through this. But like you said, they will come out better for it, I think, in the end. And like you also mentioned, they aren't out of it yet. They are only 1 game back of the 4 seed in the Ivy League. You got Cornell at 6-0, you got Yale at 6-0, and you got Princeton at 4-2. And then Harvard, Columbia, Brown are all at 2-4. So it's still possible, but like they are going to need Clark Slacker back. I haven't heard anything. I don't think you've heard anything about when potentially he can be back. So it might just be one of those things where they're just going to have to try to weather the storm. And I know they've been trying to. It hasn't gone their way, especially now that they have 2 tough matchups. They're going to be at Penn on the 10th and home against Yale on the 16th. Uh, those are not easy games. Those are not easy games. So hopefully, I mean, and then after that, they're home against Brown at Dartmouth. So maybe they'll get a little bit of reprieve and try to pick up a couple wins here, get back on track. But it's going to be tough. It's going to be very, very tough. So I don't know what to make of this Penn team right now. It's just kind of a wait and see if they'll figure it out. But unfortunately, the season got derailed once Clark Slacker went out with that injury. So that's all I think I really got to say. Probably you got to say about Penn. So we're gonna move on here instead. Cope, Villanova has ended the losing streak. How about it? 5 in a row is done. They dominated Providence 68-50 at the Wells Fargo Center on Sunday. I was in attendance for this. I know you were supposed to be. Unfortunately, you're a little bit under the weather. If you could not tell by the a little nasally, unfortunately. So one, I hope you're feeling better. You definitely look a little better than you did on Saturday. I'll tell you that much. To cope, how about I take it away here and give my observations on this game at the Wells Fargo Center. Listen, I saw I think a couple tweets that described this game perfectly. This was just an ass kicking. It's what it was. Villanova dominated from start to finish. Uh, First of all, the first half was absolutely brutal for both teams. It was 26-16 at halftime. As it was tweeted on the Big Five account, it was a shot fest. It was not a make fest. The teams were not shooting well. Providence did not shoot above 20% until late in the second half. I want to say with about 7 or so minutes left. They made a little run to cut the lead down to 13 late in the second half. But this game was just all Villanova. It was just their defensive intensity was very good. Obviously, it helps when your opponent's not hitting shots, which definitely was an abnormal day for Providence. But there also needs to be credit put out to the Villanova defense. They were flying around. They were going after balls. They were getting rebounds. This was a really good performance of them. And then offensively, it took a little bit. Eric Dixon once again was doubled almost every time he touched the ball, and they had to adjust. But they did eventually. They were moving the ball very, very well in the second half. Cope, I think they were cutting without the ball, or moving without the ball the most that we've seen from them this year, which led to open shots, which led to Eric Dixon getting open more. He had all but 2 of his points in the second half, which he led Villanova with 12 points, which is kind of saying something because uh, that's not a whole lot, especially for him. Cope, they actually didn't have a player in double figures until I think 3 minutes left in the game, which is wild. They had about 4 or 5 guys with 9 points each. But it was a good effort from Villanova. It was a great coaching job from Kyle Neptune. Uh, I was impressed with it because Providence is, as we mentioned in the last episode, a very good defensive team. And they battled, they found a way, and it was a good performance for them. Especially Tyler Burton in the second half. He came alive. He was a really big help for them. Hit 2 threes back to back, forced them to call a timeout. Was definitely moving without the ball, like I said. So it was a good performance. Definitely one that was needed from Villanova. Obviously, when you have the 5 game losing streak and you're going up against another quality opponent who's also fighting for their tournament life, it was going to be a battle, but it ended up not being as much of a battle for the Wildcats. So that's all I got on this one. Cope, what do you think of this game?
Yeah, so I don't know if I could have been any more wrong in previewing this game
Oh,
because
me
I picked
too.
Providence.
Yeah.
I think this might have been the worst, maybe the worst prediction, maybe ever. Well, I'm sure there's been a lot more, but this one was pretty. This one was pretty bad. This one was
Yeah.
pretty bad. I said I'll take Providence because I know they're going to play hard. I know I'm going to get out of them, and they were out there. They were running around. They even had their jerseys and their shorts on. But I don't
Yeah.
think they started playing until the second half started. I mean, it was a total ass kicking. You're absolutely right. It was a total ass kicking. I was listening to this game. I listened to the first maybe 10 minutes on the radio as I was driving home from work. I was supposed to be at the game, just wasn't feeling it. This is the fourth time I've been sick in the last 2 months. If anybody knows a way to stop that from happening, I don't know if we take like emergency in the morning or vitamins or anything, please
Gotta
let me
take
know
your
so this stops
multivitamins,
happening.
Cope. Gotta take your
Maybe
multivitamins.
I'll start doing that then. Whatever to stop this from happening is ridiculous. And I'm more pissed off than anything. Nobody likes being sick and just ridiculous keeps happening. So good for Villanova. I think Villanova knew this result probably would have been reversed if I showed up.
Well, that was the other thing
Villanova
I forgot
loses
to
every
mention. Yeah. Yeah, that
yeah
was
Villanova. So we'll have to push back the. Maybe I'll show up to another the next time I go to Villanova, which is hopefully soon. Then that will determine if I have a 2 game ban or not because it's void because of health reasons. But if I would have won, this result probably would have been flipped. But I guess they knew that I wasn't going, and then they decided to just put the pedal to the metal there. But yeah, total ass whooping. They put a Providence team. I mean, they put them behind the 8 ball so many times on offense. They were so good at cutting off drives. They gave up a couple in the second half. What I love was when I got home, I was watching the broadcast on FS1. Late in the game, Kyle Neptune was saying, "Play like we're not going to play the score, play the game." They gave up a couple drives, even though they were up 20 plus. Like he was pissed. He was
yeah.
pissed. I like that. I like that a lot. But really good defensively, and they forced a Providence team that is not good in terms of percentage wise. I mean, they're in the 280s, I believe, in the country in 3-point percentage as a team, and they were chucking. 33 of their 51 field goal attempts were from three, and quite a bit of them, Kyle, were not good looks and were contested. So a really, really good win for Villanova. This was a wire-to-wire victory. I mean, I guess they were winning pretty much this whole game. I know the first half was not pretty. Providence at what, 16 at halftime, 18? Wasn't good.
16. It was 26-16 at halftime.
Yeah. So really good. And they actually came back. Was it a 12-point game?
Yeah, it was
Maybe
13. It was I want to say 55-42. Man, I'm probably wrong. It was 13 though. They got it. I think it was 58-45 actually. That's what it was. It's 58-45 with about I think it was like 5 or 6 minutes left. I can check while you continue your point.
Yeah.
But
They cut it down. Like Providence is feisty here, but no, you never felt like they were really a threat to get back into this one. So when they had to have it, we've been saying that for the last 5 games, but they had to. I mean, this was the pressure is increasing by the day for this Villanova team. This is a win they had to have against another bubble team, not only a team that can boost their rankings, but a team that they need to surpass to get into the field. So really, really good win for Villanova. Kim English even said afterwards, he was like, our effort was piss poor, and that was probably the most embarrassing basketball game I've ever been a part of. So a really, really bad performance on the Friars and a really, really good one for Villanova, and they had to have it.
they did have to have it. And Cope, you were absolutely correct. It was 12 points. After that 58-45, they Villanova scored in the next possession, and then Gaines hit a three to cut it to 60-48. That was with about 3 minutes left. So they did get it down. They were down 26 at one point in this game. Providence was. They did get it down to 12, but Villanova ended up picking it back up where they were for most of the half, and they prevailed. It was a good win. It was a really, really good win. They needed it very, very badly. And hopefully they can continue this momentum going into the rest of the Big East play because they got some work to do if they want to be playing in March, is the bottom line. Hope, unfortunately, one team that will not be playing in March is the Temple Owls. They suffered yet another defeat, this time in overtime, though, to Tulane, 92-80. And Cope, this game did go to overtime. This was a very, very close game. And then the Owls were outscored 16-4 in the 5-minute extra period. Just just brutal once again for the Owls. Although not for Jordan Riley and Jaleel White as well. Jordan Riley, 23 points, 6 boards, 9 of 19 from the field, and Jaleel White, 21 points and 15 rebounds and 7 of 13. I believe he was the first player to have that high of a points and rebounds in the same game since Ernest Aflakby. I believe that was back in 2018. So credit to Varun Kumar, I think on Twitter, who I got that from. And Steve Settle too, 12 points off the bench, which is nice from him. But Cope outscored 16-4 in overtime. Thought they might have had a chance to finally get another conference win on the board. They did not. They are now 1-8 in conference play, which, if you were guessing, it is on the bottom of the American, tied with Wichita State. Although they do have, well, they're also tied for the worst record overall with UTSA at 8-14 on the year. I mean, I really don't have a ton to say about these Owls anymore. I'm just expecting the worst, unfortunately. And I don't want to be pessimistic because that's not what we're trying to do in the show. We don't want to bash anybody. We don't want to do all that. But what we are going to do, Cope, is we are going to call it as it is every single time because we are objective and fair. And when teams are doing good, we praise them. When teams are doing bad, we let them know. And unfortunately, this Owls team, as we've mentioned in the last few episodes, this is a retooling year as well for them, as we mentioned with Penn. Once again, they didn't shoot well either. 37% from the field, 25% from three. It's been the theme this year for the Owls, especially in conference play. They haven't been shooting well. They haven't had great offensive flow. And in this one, they unfortunately let up a lot of points as well. So I am a little frustrated, if you can't tell, with the Owls this year. I know it's Adam Fisher's first year. I want to give him some slack. I am going to give him some slack for sure. We knew this was going to be like this. I don't know if we knew it was going to be this bad, though. So it's just disappointing to see. So I'm done because I don't want to say anything else that would be very, very bad. I just hope that Adam Fisher can turn this around next year and years after, and I think he will. But for this year, I think I've unfortunately soured as much as I can on the Owls. But Cope, what do you think about this game and the Owls in general?
Well, it just seems like they ran out of gas here. With some of the injuries they've had, they brought Steve Settle off the bench, but Akpomo didn't play in this game. It was just these injury issues, like it really is crushing to them. Zion Stanford didn't play a ton, which I think if there's one complaint I maybe have, it's like, hey, like I saw Shiz Olsen talking about this on Twitter, and I think he's definitely has a point here because you've seen how good Zion can be in the flashes he's shown this year. Like, not going to be that good. Which when we talk preseason, I said best case scenario, this is a middle of the pack team.
Yeah,
best case scenario, best. If everything goes right, this is a middle of the pack team in the AAC. Like I'm not expecting a ton this year. Never really was. They started off 3-0. Like, that was cool. That was fun. But was still never expecting that to generate like a ton of wins and be that sustainable.
But so, this is a new low, unfortunately.
And that's just kind of been the last couple of years, unfortunately. So and you said this is a retooling. This is not a retooling year. There's nothing to There's nothing to retool on the team. There's like 3 players to retool on the team. It's like this is a total rebuild, most of which had to be thrown together like through the portal. You had one true freshman. Well, I mean, Quante Berry's a redshirt freshman, but you had one true freshman recruit come in Zion Stanford. Like, I'm more like looking forward to the future here. This year is like, I think like anything Adam Fisher can give you, you'll take, but I didn't really expect a ton this year. But look, tough place to go play down there. They just beat Memphis, although Memphis seems like a phony that we'll talk about. I mean, they were top 10 at one point. And suddenly this team lost to Rice. They lost to Tulane. But they just ran out of gas here at the end. So I understand your frustration because it's one of the best programs of all time in college basketball. And you haven't seen that lately. It's frustrating, but give it time. I think they will become relevant once again under Adam Fisher. But will it happen this year? No. Was it going to happen this year? Sadly, also no, is the reality.
Yeah, and I don't blame all of my frustrations on Adam Fisher. I actually don't blame any of my frustrations on Adam Fisher. He came in. We knew all of the talented players from last year. Most of them, at least, were going to transfer. Uh, and he had to piece together a roster, like you said. And he's doing the best he can, and I know that. My frustration is just like you said. It's been like this for a few years now. Temple has not made the NCAA tournament since 2019. This will now be 5 years. It's probably among the longest that they've gone in program history. I mean, like you said, they're one of historically, even though they never won a national championship and we've never made a Final Four, but one of the most decorated programs in terms of wins. I mean, the Cheney era was among some of the peaks of any team that, unfortunately didn't win a championship either. It's frustrating to see. Bless you. It's frustrating to see. And I do think Adam Fisher's the guy to turn it around. I also thought Aaron McKee was the guy to turn it around too after Fran Dunphy left. So yeah, I'm hoping that he figures it out and that they figure it out. There's still a lot to be determined there. So I'm also looking forward until next year. This year, unfortunately, is a wash. And for the next 6 weeks or so, we're just gonna have to deal with it as it is. And we're still gonna provide, obviously, our frustrations aren't gonna get in the way of the great coverage that we do. But we're gonna tell it how it is. And unfortunately it stinks right now for the Owls. So that is that. And Cope, that is all from the weekend. So why don't we get into some previews here? Because we do have some good ones coming up. I'm going to let you pick the game that you want to go over first. I'll go second. Cope, what is your game of the midweek slate in the Big Five?
Well, Kyle, there is one ranked team on this midweek slate. And that is the Dayton Flyers. And they are coming back to Philadelphia. They were just there. Was it the 18th? I was there. They played at Tom Gola against LaSalle. They're now coming to Hagan Arena. And they're going to play the St. Joe's Hawks. And shout out to our guy, Matt Dunn, at St. Joe's. The last time that St. Joe's had a ranked win at Hagan Arena, it came against the Dayton Flyers. So, long story short, because we're going to get to our pick 'em soon. I'm going to pick St. Joe's to win this game, Kyle. I think it's going to be a really good atmosphere at Hagan on a Tuesday night, CBS. I think they're going to get it done here. And the big matchup, of course, is Deron Holmes versus Kreese DeSandoco. Kreese just got A10 Rookie of the Week. Deron Holmes consistently has been the Player of the Week in the Atlantic 10. I mean, he's the front runner right now for Player of the Year in the conference and, an NBA draft pick. We've talked about how good he's been. But that's what the matchup's going to be. And not only is it huge to have, a player and a team like that come to Hagan Arena, but, the way Kreese is now healthy, we've seen how good he can be. He's been putting up numbers. The team has been putting up wins. So now it's going to be a really good litmus test for him to see, okay, he's got a really good center coming. Is he going to be able to defend him down low? Is St. Joe's as a whole, are they going to double team Deron Holmes? I would. But then at the same time, they're a good three-point shooting team. Kobe Bryant, we talked about him a couple weeks ago, almost shooting 50% from three, which is unheard of, Kyle, in February. That's insane. So, a couple things, because, we want to see if Kreese has the physical build to be able to handle a guy like Deron Holmes. But then if you're going to double him and you're going to kick out the shooters, this is probably going to be a fast-paced game then. If the defense is going to be flying around, maybe you can get some deflections, some turnovers. Like, this is probably going to be a fast-paced game, which I believe favors the Hawks, definitely. Because Dayton, a good defensive team and that has a good anchor in Deron Holmes, who, of course, is good as season offense, is also a good defender at the rim as well. They're going to want to push the pace here to negate Holmes in the paint because you're not going to be able to get to the rim like you did at will, the way you did against LaSalle with a guy like Deron Holmes in the middle there. So, but with this game, with a ranked team coming to town, with St. Joe's stringing some wins together and putting that 0-3 start to A10 play behind them, I think this is a game where they're going to be able to knock down some threes. They're going to play with some confidence. And in a very loud Hagan Arena, Kyle, I think the Hawks are going to knock off the Dayton Flyers and give them their first ranked win since those Flyers came to town some years ago. So in an upset, I'm going to take St. Joe's here, Kyle. I think if they knock down some threes, it'll be their night and they can pull this thing off.
All right. That was very, very good analysis, Cope. I very much appreciated that. Uh, and I'm going to save my pick for our segment we're going to introduce in a second here. I'm going to go now, though, for my game of the midweek slate. Contrary to popular belief, I am not choosing Villanova versus Xavier. I am going to the CAA and I am choosing Drexel traveling down to Wilmington to take on UNCW. Obviously, this is the second matchup they're playing this year. Drexel won the first one, 78-63. And that kind of kicked off their trajectory up to the top of the CAA. This was one of the early games for them of the conference play slate here. But listen, this UNCW team is very, very good. They're led by Jazarian White, who averages 20.7 rebounds a game. Shaquem Phillips, also very important for them, 13.5 points a game, averaging 3.2 assists, 1.7 steals. So he's kind of their table setter and also good perimeter defender. Jazarian White obviously is getting his down low. And these teams are pretty evenly matched, Cope. Drexel's 107 in Ken Palm, UNCW's 112. Drexel's a little bit better defensively, 84, whereas UNC Wilmington's 205. But UNC Wilmington's better offensively. They are ranked 64th, whereas Drexel's 138. Big thing here, we always talk about it with this Drexel team, is rebounding, specifically offensive rebounding. They're 23rd in the nation in that regard, whereas on the defensive boards, UNC Wilmington 197th, and also they're 170th in offensive rebounding, whereas Drexel is 36th. So that is what I think is the most important matchup in this one. Obviously, Amari Williams. Ooh, that thumbs up was cool. I didn't know that happened. Anyway, I thought that was just a FaceTime thing. Okay, Zoom, I see you. Anyway, we're gonna keep going. Listen, I don't know if it's gonna do it for you, Cope. And do it for you? Thumbs up. That's fine. There we go. All right, back to the analysis. Listen, it's going to come down to offensive rebounding. Well, rebounding in general. Drexel has dominated the boards for a lot of these games in CAA play, and when they have been very, very successful, and they've won these games. Obviously, it will be tough to stop this UNCW team, especially. Cope, here's a stat for you. UNCW is the number one team in the country in terms of taking care of the basketball. They're number one in offensive turnover percentage, only 12.6 percent turnover percentage per game. So this is going to be a very, very close matchup. I don't think it's going to be the blowout that it was when they traveled to Drexel, but I am still going to go with the Dragons. They've been playing great basketball. They have lost two out of the last three, unfortunately. But I think they're going to turn around here. I think it's a good matchup for them. I do think this UNCW team's very, very good, but I think this Drexel team's a little bit better. I think the rebounding disparity will definitely go in the Dragons' favor, and I think that'll create more second chance points, which will ultimately lead them to win this game. So that is that for our favorite matchups. Now, Cope, here's what I was just alluding to and what we're going to introduce. We're going to introduce officially a pick'em here on the Big Five Pod. We're going to keep track of our picks. We're going to pick each game for the midweek slate, for the weekend slate when that comes around, obviously. It's not going to be these deep dive analysis for every game. Those are still going to be saved for our favorite games of the slate for that particular episode, but we are going to pick our games for the slate. So, Cope, you obviously already picked Dayton and St. Joe's. You picked the Hawks. I am going to go with the Hawks and that matchup. It's at home. If this was at Dayton, I think it would be a different story. But I think they're also going to get their first ranked win since the Flyers came to town some years ago, as you mentioned. That battle between Deron Holmes and Crease is going to be very interesting to watch. But I do think the Hawks will pull this one out. And why don't we go to you for the UNC Wilmington Drexel matchup? What is your pick for that one?
So I loved everything you said, breaking down all those stats about that game and the rebounding. But here's what I'm going to say. You mentioned that Drexel's lost two of their last three. And two of those three, and those two losses, Kyle, at Towson, at Monmouth. They're on the road again at UNC Wilmington. I believe the Seahawks going to protect home court. It's going to be a really good game from Jazarian White. So I'm going to go with the Seahawks here. Tough to win on the road in conference play, Kyle.
It
I've said it a
is.
billion times that you're probably tired of me saying it, and you were probably tired of me saying it from this time last year. But hard to win on the road in conference play in college basketball. I'm going to take UNCW here.
Okay. It was close for me, I will say, but I think the rebounding advantage is going to be good for the Dragons. But it is, like you said, it is very, very, very tough to win on the road, especially in conference play. All right, we're gonna move on then. Rapid fire picks here, Cope. St. Louis at LaSalle. Who do you got?
So look, St. LaSalle, the only team in the A10 that's worse than them record wise is the St. Louis Billikens. Travis Ford's coaching for his job, which I don't think he's going to have retained at the end of the season, even though he's got a very high buyout. They're a mess. They're a shell of what they've been the last couple of years, and the whole burner thing. Although it's kind of hilarious, it's just an awful look on top of what's been a really bad year for St. Louis. So I'm going to take LaSalle here. Frank Dunphy's a better coach than Travis Ford, and these Billikens are not good. They're going to have to defend inside. Rokas is not going to be able to have 3 fouls in 2 minutes against Bradley as a Weiro down low. So even with that, give me LaSalle.
Yeah, Cope, I want to go with the Explorers as well. I think they're going to be playing pissed off from a game that they know they should have won against St. Joe's. And like you said, this St. Louis team just is not that good. They've not been what they have been the last few years. And as you mentioned, it's hard to win on the road in conference play. I think that applies here. I am going to go with LaSalle. Villanova at Xavier on Wednesday as well. I'll start with this one. I'm going to go with the Wildcats. Even though I still am not extremely confident in Villanova, I am also not very confident in this Xavier team either. Xavier, excuse me. I know we're still fixing that. I'm thinking of the name Xavier, of course, but listen, these teams. I'm not picking X, but I'll throw up the X. These teams are very, very evenly matched, I think. So it's really just going to come down to who's going to hit their shots, who's going to defend, and who's going to provide the most energy. I think Villanova will be rejuvenated after their win against Providence, and I'm going to go with the Wildcats here.
Yeah, I'm going to pick them as well. They finally broke the streak. They got a win here, and I'm going to take them to roll into the Cintas Center and get a victory. It was a close game last time. A lot of points in that game. It was a close game last time, or at least was it? Am I thinking of a different game? But they held Desmond Claude to a low shooting percentage. He missed a couple shots at the end. The only reason that the Musketeers really got back into that first matchup was because they put the press on, and Villanova had some turnovers at the end of that one. So that game, the first one shouldn't have been. It was still a relatively close game. It just shouldn't have come down to that last possession.
Yeah, they won by a point.
And it's going to be, and it's going to be close. That's a hard place to go play at the Cintas Center. And I do think Sean Miller is a pretty damn good coach. Even though he couldn't get to a Final Four at Arizona, I still think he's a pretty damn good coach. They got a good team. They have 3 guards that can really score. Quincy Oliveri just had a career high 43 points. 43, Kyle. Now I'm going to put a tiny asterisk because that's very, very impressive to do in a college basketball game, but they played DePaul. But still very impressive nonetheless. So I'm going to roll with Villanova. This will be a nail biter, a very, very close game at the Cintas Center in Cincinnati, but I'm going to take Villanova to get a second win in a row. I think now that they start to build some momentum, like they're not out of it. This isn't like last year where it's like it's a total uphill climb to even get into the conversation. Like they're on the bubble that first 4 teams out. They're right there. They need this game. They need it more than Xavier, who still has a lot of work to do to even get into consideration for the field. So I'm going to roll with Villanova here, Kyle.
Okay, I agree. And Cope, finally, we do have one more last matchup here on Thursday. I think we both know where we're going to pick here. Memphis traveling to Philly to take on Temple. I know we said it's hard to win in conference play. I know we've mentioned that, or hard to win on the road in conference play, excuse me. I know we mentioned that Memphis also has had a dramatic drop of form in the last few weeks here. However, I am still going to go with this Memphis team. They are just way too talented in comparison to this Temple team, and I know they are traveling, but this Temple team is playing the worst basketball they played all season, and this Memphis team is too. But I think this can be a get-right game for them. Excuse me. And that's as simple as that. I'm going to go with Memphis. I hate that we've agreed on most of these picks, Cope, but sometimes you have to just play it as it lies. So I'm going to go Memphis here. I think you're going to go Memphis here too, but why don't we hear it officially?
Yeah, I'm going to roll Memphis. Of course, after saying it's very, very hard to win on the road in conference play in college basketball. My last two picks and your last two picks have both been the road teams, going into road environments, and we're going to pick them to win. But yeah, they're just more talented. Javon Quinterly, the point guard, David Jones coming over from St. John's. How about the year David Jones has had? I mean, you can make a case, Kyle, that like the guys that transferred out of St. John's last year could be playing better than the guys that Rick Pitino brought in to replace him.
Yeah.
I mean, David Jones has been one of the best transfer portal scorers in college basketball this year. He's been terrific. So I'm going to roll with Memphis here. Really wish this wasn't the case, but I think it'll be close. I hope if there's a silver line, I guess I hope it'll be close. It's going to be the whiteout game for Temple this year, because it would be if Florida Atlantic was coming to town, that would be the whiteout game, but they're not. Temple goes down to Boca Raton to play them, and then that's that for the season. But I'm going to roll with Memphis. Yeah, that's all I got to say about that. We're just two dejected Temple fans that just want to see good basketball.
We are, and that's the bottom line. All right, Cope, that was fun. We're going to keep doing that. We're going to keep doing the pick 'em. We're going to keep track of our picks, and there will be a graphic put out on social media for our picks and our records and whatnot as well. So definitely make sure you keep track of that. And that's pretty much all we got here. Cope, any final thoughts before we sign off?
Well, yeah, we'll have to keep a tally on that and figure out a punishment for one of us. But the reason I wanted to do that, Kyle, and do the pick 'em is, hey, you look at the calendar. I was looking at ESPN today. Looking at the schedule, the last day of regular season games for college basketball is March 10th, because the Big Ten always drags it out late, and they have because they're that
so
last. I believe they're the last conference tournament to finish up before the selection show starts. So they finish up so late, and it's like, hey man, like we got a month left. So as we kind of see the finish line and see the light at the end of the tunnel here to March, I figured, hey, why don't we clock our picks and maybe for my case, and if you're just a jinx, you can see how bad you actually are doing this.
Yeah, which we both definitely have jinx potential. I would say probably more me than you. Me picking games, you in person for sure. We know all about that though. Hopefully we can reverse both of those jinxes as well, but. Yeah, Cope, the light is at the end of the tunnel. It is February 5th at the time of this recording, February 6th at the time that you guys are seeing this. We are very, very, very close, less than 6 weeks. So make sure you rest up until then, because once that calendar hits March, it is go, go, go. And we are very excited for that. And we're also very thankful for you guys for tuning in. As always, appreciate your love and support all the time. To keep loving and supporting us, make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel. Make sure you follow us on Instagram and Twitter at Big5Pod, and make sure you listen to our audio only versions on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. And with that being said, we will see you this weekend.